Okay, folks, welcome back to Battle for Azeroth. Wanted to do a state of for discipline. So, the big thing with discipline in Legion was they reworked how it works. If we look in the spellbook, they made it so that atonement, you heal through atonement. So, atonement works like a buff, a 15-second buff. And then as you deal damage or you use your damage spells, a portion of that is converted into healing. And Discrease were some of the better healers in Legion. And rightly so. And even better in Battle for Azeroth, from what I've been seeing. As I've been doing Battlegrounds, I've noticed that it's quite often to see a disc priest at the top of the top healer. Or if there's more than one, that's who will be at the top of healing. So we lost our artifact. The only spec that kept their artifact ability was Shadow in the form of a talent. In addition to them changing a couple spells, they actually added 2 spells to disc, which is not something you can say very often in Battle for Azeroth. We got 2 new abilities. They both were exclusive to Holy. In Legion, we got Desperate Prayer. Increases maximum health by 25% for 10 seconds and instantly heals you for that amount. I think this is kind of redundant for discipline. Because if you have a shield on yourself and you're doing damage, you're essentially doing the same thing. I have learned from tanking that abilities that increase your maximum health, you pretty well need a sustained amount of healing. You basically need a healer on you healing you exclusively. I really only use this on Holy because it's there. I use it to try to prolong dying and triggering Spirit of Redemption, which is um, the graveyard spirit that holy priests turn into after they die. I have not used this yet as discipline. That's how useful I think it is, or another way of looking at it, that's how much you don't really need it as discipline. The second one is Holy Nova. Causes an explosion of holy light around you, dealing X amount of holy damage to all enemies and X amount of healing to all allies within 12 yards. I have played with this quite a bit, and at most, it has a minor effect. I wanted it to be good. It seems good. At most, though, it has a minor effect. The numbers are just too low, I think. With the stat squish, I saw this on my shaman with Earth Shield. If the numbers are too low, it just doesn't, certain abilities just don't work as well as they either used to or that they should, I think. The other thing I would say is it doesn't interact with Atonement. There are very few abilities that actually interact with Atonement, meaning either applying it or extending it or doing something with it. I think that's maybe the strange element to this is the atonement absorption kind of aspect to it. Don't get me wrong, that's what I enjoy about playing it. It's just kind of an odd. Most healers are pretty straightforward with what they do. They do one thing and they do it. They take advantage of it in most cases. So with this kind of splitting how they heal, it's a little bit different. You could very easily continue playing without using either of these abilities and you'd be fine. I only was using Holy Nova, trying to play around with it, trying to figure out does it work in somewhere or something, and no, it doesn't. Oftentimes I found myself wanting to use this in place of Power Word Radiance, which is your main source, or at least my main source, for applying Atonement. So, Power Word Shield, Shadow Mend, and Power Word Radiance apply Atonement, yes. As for the abilities they changed, we got Power Word Fortitude back, first of all. Works just as it did before, as far as I can tell. Yes. They changed Power Word Shield. It was kind of if I had one I guess if I had one complaint about Disc in Legion, it was that at times it could be trying to apply Atonement. At times can be difficult. So in trying to, at least my guess is in trying to answer that, they took the cooldown away from Power Word Shield. This is the first time I can remember that Power Word Shield has neither a cooldown or a debuff. And it's a bit strange because your mind, you're thinking, okay, there's a debuff, so I can't use it again, or there's a cooldown, or no. I kind of like it this way. It has some interesting synergies with talents. It just takes some getting used to. So, yeah. Now, you may also be thinking, well, wait, if this no longer has a cooldown, then what does Rapture do? Because Rapture in Legion used to give you the ability to spam Power Word Shield without triggering the cooldown. At least that's what I thought. That's how I figured out they had changed. Rapture. Rapture now increases the amount that Power Word Shield absorbs, so it just doubles it, essentially. Or triples it, I guess. Triples it, yes. So, which is kind of redundant again because we have Luminous Barrier now, which I will get into as we go over the talents. So, other than that, that's pretty much it. So, if we look at my talent, the only thing that I know of that is new for sure is Luminous Barrier. I took Castigation because it allows Penance to fire one additional bolt over its duration. Penance is your biggest single target heal, regardless of how you use it. It does damage and healing. And either way, whether you use it through Atonement or whether you use it directly on a target, it's going to be your biggest single target heal. Twist of Fate can only be used on targets below 35 health. I tend not to like abilities that have a health requirement. I feel like they go used more than they go unused. I could see this having potential. For PvP, though, I don't know. Castigation just always seemed to be better, in my opinion. Schism, back when I started playing Discipline, this was the recommended talent. You saw a lot of Dispriests take this. Less so now. I think people kind of figured out that Penance I think people figured out how good Penance is. This is, first of all, it's another ability. I've already got enough abilities. And second of all, it does make your playstyle a bit more complicated. It increases the damage you do to the target you use it on. So, with a 21-second cooldown, which is rather long for what it does. There's other DPS abilities that have a similar effect, and I'm just not coordinated. I looked at this and then I said, no, I think Castigation, it's buffing something I already use. And Penance is my go-to ability. I really only use Smite when Penance is on cooldown. Or if somebody has used Hero or something like that. You can, in PvP, Holy Radiance is instant cast. So I will spam Holy Radiance and then just spam Smite, and that seems to work. Using Penance when it's off cooldown, and that seems to work rather well. Body and Soul. Power Word Shield and Leap of Faith increase your target's movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds. Can occur once every 6 seconds. This has been my default for this tier for as long as I can remember. It only gives Leap of Faith the speed boost as Discipline and Holy. It does not for Shadow. Which is rather nice because you will see priests in PvP on flag maps that will Leap of Faith the flag carrier to their base. So it's a rather nice little effect. With Power Word Shield no longer having a cooldown, you can essentially get a speed boost every 3 seconds. The effect itself lasts for 3 seconds. It can only occur every 6 seconds. But you're halfway through the 6 seconds when the initial effect ends. So not too bad. Still a bit strange that Power Word Shield doesn't have a cooldown. I mean, it feels strange. You got used to thinking, okay, cooldown or debuff or something. So to be fair, it hasn't had a debuff for a while now, and that's how ingrained it is. I still think it has a I still think, oh no, I can't use it on him. I have to wait for the debuff. Oh no, I can use it. Yeah, so it goes through my mind every time. Yeah. Masochism. This is a bit weird. This is kind of the odd one out. It's the only one of the three that doesn't increase your speed. When you use Shadow Mend on yourself, which I rarely use, one of the differences between me and most Disc Priest. Shadow Mend, for those that may not know, wraps the ally in shadows, which heals for 9,700, but at a price, the ally will take 489 damage 1 second, every 1 second until they have taken 4,894 total damage from all sources or leave combat. So it's the drawback, and it turns it into a healing bot, basically. Which I can see have value. I think giving yourself a speed boost is rarely a bad thing. And since I don't really use Shadow Mend anyway, it's really more of an emergency heal for me. In a pinch, if you need direct healing, if penance is on cooldown and it's just not worth going through reapplying atonement and doing damage to something, I will use if you need one-on-one healing, I will use Shadow Mend in a pinch. Angelic Feather places a feather on the ground, which increases movement speed by 40% for 5 seconds. Same ability we've had forever. It's a target on location ability. That's the only thing I really don't like about it. I've tried using it, and that just, to be its coordination, I just don't necessarily care for target location abilities. And Body and Soul, you can use Power Word Shield on yourself, and you essentially get the same effect. So, and this can be spammed endlessly. Angelic Feather has a 20-second recharge, and it only has 3 max charges to begin with. So, Mindbender replaces Shadow Fiend. The damage this does is also converted into healing through atonement. So if you need extra healing or burst healing, Mindbender works great for that. 1 minute cooldown, not too bad. Also helps you regenerate mana. Don't have any mana issues. The only time I will have mana issues is if I'm doing like Eye of the Storm and we're fighting over the flag. Those skirmishes can last for a while. However, at that point, all the healers are having mana issues, so it's not something exclusive to me. So, Shield Discipline. When your Power Word Shield is completely absorbed, you restore 5% of your maximum mana. Again, don't have mana issues, so this really wasn't an option. Power Word Solace does damage and restores 1% of your maximum mana. Again, I've already got enough abilities, and I don't have mana issues. So, unless for some specific reason you need to regenerate your mana, you have options. That's the one positive thing I will say. I didn't really see a point to take Power Word Solace, so I don't feel like I'm lacking as far as damage abilities. So Mindbender works fine. It improves something I already have, and that's what I tend to lean towards. So yeah. Psychotic Voice reduces the cooldown of Psychotic Scream by 30%, so by half, which is pretty good because I use this a lot in PvP. Dominant Mind is a bit of a weird one to me. It lets you mind control yourself and one additional character. Mind control has a 2-minute cooldown and may not be used against players. So I'm really not sure what the purpose for this is necessarily. I know out in the greater world you can use mind control on NPCs and do some different things. I rarely use mind control, and if I do, it's in PvP. And normally I get trinketed, so I'm getting better. It's kind of one of those abilities you kind of have to use, just make it a habit of using over and over and over. You have to spot the opportunity to use it, I think. Shining Force creates a burst of light around a friendly target, knocking away nearby enemies and slowing their movement speed by 70% for 3 seconds. Rarely see priests take this. Every once in a while. I think Psychotic Voice is probably the default here. Unless there was a specific reason you wanted a knockback ability, or to slow your opponent. Yeah, otherwise Psychotic Scream is pretty good. So Contrition. When you heal with Penance, everyone with your Atonement is healed for 653. So I originally started out with Sins of the Many. Your damage is increased by up to 12%, diminishing for each ally affected by your Atonement. And I picked this when the pre-patch came out. However, I did not play Priest much during the pre-patch. So as I'm leveling, and as I'm doing dungeons and battlegrounds, I'm noticing my healing has dropped off quite a bit. I'm thinking, well, okay, I know the stat squish has affected discipline. It's affected all the classes more or less. It shouldn't have affected me this much. So I started going through looking at my talents. And I came to this, and I thought, well, maybe I could swap this out for something else. And then I was just looking, and I thought, well, we can try Contrition and see. It doesn't look like it does a lot. However, where the stats are, it does enough. There's not really a clear choice in this tier. Shadow Covant draws on the power of Shadow to heal the target and 4 injured allies within 30 yards for X amount, but leaves a shell on them that absorbs the next X amount of healing they've received within 6 seconds. So again, I've already got enough abilities, and it has a drawback. So I ruled this out almost immediately. And then it was just between Contrition, and Sins of the Many. I'm still on the fence with Sins of the Many. I don't know now that I'm max level if there's some way this is good. Um, if it works better in raids, I'm not sure. Um, Contrition works fine. So Halo. This is one of the big differences between me and most other disc priests. Most take Purge the Wicked, which replaces Shadowword Pain. I took Halo just because I wanted to. Halo, I remember from Miss, which I think is when it got added. Don't hold me to that. It's one of those details I'm not sure of. And I remember people using it in raids, and it was just it was one of the spells that made me want to play a priest. So I took it just to have fun. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole point. It's just to have fun. And it actually works rather well with discipline, I think. It does healing and damage. So the healing, of course, is healing allies, and the damage is getting converted through atonement into healing. So it's actually really good for burst healing. If you are, say you are in a Rothi Basin and everybody kind of, there's a small group that went to a base, if you can spam atonement and get a bunch of atonement out, and then use Halo, it does damage to everything and it heals everything. And it has a 40-second cooldown. So I rarely use this, I will admit. As I said, I usually use it more for burst healing. You do have to be careful using it outside of PvP because you can unintentionally end up pulling other things. And with the dungeons in Battle for Azeroth, they are some just have a ridiculous amount of trash. And since everything scales to your level, pulling too much can make you wipe fairly easily nowadays. So you do have to be mindful when you use it. I just think it's a fun ability to have, and it does a decent job for what it does. And at this point, I'm so out of habit now. I'm so ingrained with using it. In Legion, Purge the Wicked was a better Shadowword Pain. However, I was looking, and with the stat squish, the numbers are much closer together. As long as you have 2 or 3 Shadowword Pain out and you're keeping Atonement up, Atonement only lasts for 15 seconds. So you're going to have to end up reapplying it anyway. You're fine. I've never seen a reason why you had to take this. Other than just following like a cookie cutter build. So I would say Halo or Purge the Wicked. Either one's a perfectly valid choice. Divine Star only affects what's in front of you, and then returns and affects what's in front of you. Chi Burst is very similar for monks, and I just don't like abilities that only affect what's in front of you. First of all, thinking of PvP, people are moving, jumping around. It's very difficult to target things directly in front of you. Dragon's Breath for fire mages. will disorient targets in front of you, and that's I think primarily why fire mages use it, if I remember correctly. I don't think it does a significant amount of damage. And again, it's very difficult to like target things in front of you, unless you just come across somebody that's not paying attention, and that's usually me. So um, I've I've kept my healing's been on par with other disc priests. I tend to do slightly more damage than your average disc priest, and I think this is why. So, which is why, again, why Holy Nova was disappointing, because it's a much smaller version of Halo. Um, it does more healing than damage, which is fine. So a spell that does both in a 30-yard radius is pretty good. So, yeah. And then lastly, the new ability, Luminous Barrier. So, Power Word Barrier has a bit of an interesting history in the game. Ever since it was added, and I want to say it was added, I think, I'm not even sure. I was thinking one thing and I was like, no, I think that's too far back. It was added during a time when they were trying to, if I'm not mistaken, make sure that every healer had one raid heal cooldown of some kind. Because Priest got Power Word Barrier, that's why Shaman ended up with Spirit Link Totem, if I remember correctly. With Power Word Barrier, when it first came out, it was so overpowered that guilds were just stacking priests to use Power Word Barrier, and they were just skipping mechanics. So it got nerfed. And that had pretty well been the story, every expansion, every pre-patch, whenever they decided to do it, they would try to nerf it. So in its last form, it was a target on location ability, which I don't think it always was. I think at one time it actually formed around wherever the priest was standing, if I'm not mistaken, like back in the day. Like back when priests still had soul well, or light well. Excuse me, light well. I'm pretty sure, because as I remember, I have the memory of thinking, well, this is kind of frustrating because it targets where I am, and I wasn't standing in the right spot when I tried to use it. Like one of the first times, as I remember. I digress. So Luminous Barrier essentially is a reverse in what they've been doing, and they've made it overpowered again. Because now what Luminous Barrier does is create a shield on all allies within 40 yards, absorbing X amount of damage on each of them for 10 seconds. So it essentially puts a mini power word barrier on any ally within 40 yards. Yeah. If you don't think that's overpowered, every priest has taken this. Every priest. Because I have been in battlegrounds and I thought I've done something, and then I've seen everybody use it. It has quite the standout animation. And I thought, oh no, did I move my mouse or something and accidentally hit it? No, there was another priest in the group, and they used it. In fact, one battleground I can remember, there was me and at least one other disc priest. Power Word Barrier is exclusive to disc now, as of at least Legion. I think it always was. Again, just one of those details I'm not exactly sure of. There was me and at least one other disc priest, and every time he would use his Luminous Barrier, I would wait until it, wait 10 seconds for it to fall off, and then I would use mine. So we essentially did the same thing that people were doing with Power Word Barrier back in the day. In Rage, we were just doing it in a battleground because we were at the the other faction's boss. So this tier actually has choices, I think, possible choices. Lency? Lenacy. Yes. Atonement reduces damage taken by 3%. Not terrible. Not a lot, but not terrible. Evangelism. Evangelism. There we go. Extends the duration of all your active atonements by 6% on essentially a 1 minute cooldown. So this I could see actually getting use, especially in raids. 15 seconds is not very long. There was a PvP talent that extended the duration, I think, to, I want to say it was like 17, like 2 seconds longer. And that was better, but it still seemed short. And I think, again, I think that's why they took the cooldown off Power Word Shield. So you had another way to apply atonement. So, yeah, not too bad. It's a bit weird. It's a bit strange because it doesn't actually affect atonement. Like I said, you have two things. You have healing through atonement. So you put atonement out, and then you do damage, and your damage is converted into healing. Then you have just outright shields. The strange thing is they don't work together. Shields don't heal you. Shields just prevent you from taking damage. It was the frustrating thing with Shaman, with Spirit Link Totem, because it essentially does something very similar. It levels everyone's health out to an equal amount for whoever's standing within the circle, as it were. But it's not healing, so it doesn't count as healing. So to me, that's what's frustrating from a healing standpoint, is you have abilities that are good, are worthwhile. Luminous Barrier is, I would say, easily one of the most overpowered abilities in the game right now, of what I've seen so far from classes I've played myself and other classes I've seen in PvP and dungeons and world PvP and things like that. However, it's a strange for a disc priest. You're thinking, okay, I've got to get atonement out. You're watching, every 15 seconds for that to fall off, or you're looking for someone to apply it on. You're trying to do damage. You're trying to keep Shadow Word Pain up, so you have a dot that's doing damage and things like that, and then you just have a shield. That's all it does. So to me, it's a bit of a strange contrast. That said, that's why I like playing Discipline. Just a bit of a strange concept. So Luminous Barrier seems like this powerful ability, and then you're thinking, oh, I can do damage, and then you're looking and you're going, why is nobody getting healed? And then you're like, oh, that's right, because it doesn't actually do anything with atonement. So that's kind of where my thinking is when I see people use it, because it is the same color as atonement. The little debuff looks like the passive icon. So they're very similar. So you see kind of the yellow orange icon, and you think, oh, it's atonement. No. I don't think it would be out of line to give Holy Nova, if nothing else, the ability to apply or the ability to extend um, atonement. That would give it a good usefulness. I could see using it more if it did that, just to extend the duration so I could, maybe Penance has 2 seconds to come off cooldown. So I use Holy Nova to extend the duration a couple seconds just to get another channel of penance off or something of that nature. My PvP talents are pretty much the same as they were in Legion. Ultimate Radiance makes Power Word Radiance instant cast and increases healing. Dark Angel increases the damage of allies affected by atonement, or allies with atonement. And then Dome of Light reduces the cooldown of Luminous Barrier by 60 seconds and increases the amount absorbed. So, not too bad. I imagine I will have something more to say as I start PvPing more. Like I said, I have noticed that the battlegrounds that I've been in where there's been a disc priest, they have more often than not been the top healers. So that was my motivation for wanting to level my priest. So there you go, folks. There is a state of for discipline. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching.